Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the Southern Chaos Waste, playing as the force of the Empire against the force of the Beastmen. And my opponent has gone all out here to cheese the hell out of me, so this is definitely going to be a bit of a quote-unquote fun one. Either way, this matchup, definitely I'd say one of the more even ones. Beastmen don't really have to worry too much about fear and terror necessarily from Empire. Obviously Empire does have some tools for it, like Boris or Griffins. Definitely some leadership bomb options, but not as brutal as, say, Vampire Counts or Coast or anything like that. Obviously Beastmen's high mobility and all that does work very well against Empire gun lines and infantry. On the flip side, though, Empire, of course, heavy cav and all that, it's a very potent force, so it's a very back and forth, very even, in my opinion, match. And I figured, you know what, let's try a balanced build. Normally, I usually go for full-on Russia's Empire, or I try to do something a bit cheesy, perhaps, with a flyer build. And I said, you know what, let's try something balanced. Let's bring artillery, and let's see if we can play a bit of an even game. So, for my lord here, rolling with Boris Todbringer. Not much to be said for this guy. He's pretty awesome. He's got his full kit here: Midland Runefang, Crush the Weak, White Cloak of Ulrich, and Hold the Line. The nice thing about Boris, of course, steady regens without need for a healer. Alongside him, we do have a Bright Wizard. The Bright Wizard is a pretty nasty customer. I really like him to bail out heroes who are trapped. He's got Piercing Bolts of Burning, which can just decimate blobs. Cascading Fire Cloak to help protect cavalry or lords or high-value units. Fireball, of course, to snipe single targets. And then Kindle Flame to buff all your troops up. And it synergizes really nicely with my Knights of the Blazing Sun, who I have over here. Finally, we do have a Power Stone to sort of get our Winds of Magic up. Now, as for my main line, it's actually pretty cheap. Simply 3 units of swordsmen. One of those is the Regiment Round Sigmar Sons, who are pretty awesome. A bunch of spearmen, 3 units of them, making up the infantry contingent there. And then the rest of it is cav. So we do have 3 units of Pistoliers. Now, Pistoliers, this is one of the matchups where they perform really well. Beastmen cavalry is so squishy that these guys can get a lot of work done. They're very good against Minotaurs. They're just cost effective against basically everything. And if your opponent decides to run after you with hounds, you've got Empire heavy cav to run them the hell over. So we've got 2 units of Knights of the Blazing Sun as well as 2 Empire Knights here, looking to squash my opponent's cavalry if he brought any, and potentially get rear charges, devastating attacks like that. Now my opponent decides, as I mentioned at the beginning here, to cheese the hell out of me. He's got 2 Cygors, so a very gimmicky build. 2 Cygors, Morgar here with both of his Gal Spawn summons, as well as the Call to Violence. And then, in case two Cygors was not enough, he also does have Brave Shaman of the Wild here with a Cygor summon. So even more Cygors. And of course, Cygors are not the in this patch just yet. The summons are not yet nerfed. That's going to be happening soon. And so he's going to be able to get these summons. And unless I kill them, they're going to stay out there throwing rocks at me. They're unbreakable. I do believe that this is a little bit of a mistake here, though, for my opponent, not bringing a secondary cheap spell, because sometimes you just don't have enough Winds of Magic to get a second Cygor off. Sometimes you're just under too much pressure, and in my opinion, it's nice to bring a second Cygor. Bestial Surge also doesn't synergize well with expensive spells like Savage Dominion. Finally, he does have the Jagged Dagger for Winds of Magic, which makes a lot of sense. Definitely a good choice. He also does have a Gorbull. The Gorbull does have Foe Seeker to keep his vigor up, as well as the Slaughterer's Skull. Great AoE buff to help support, especially these Minotaurs with Great Weapons. Minotaurs with Great Weapons, definitely one of those units I tend to bash, and I don't think they're very good. Very squishy unit, no shields, and the most expensive Minotaur variant. So sure, they've got a bonus for Slaughter, but they're so squishy. For his front line, my opponent bought 3 units of Bestigors as well as 2 Ungors, so definitely a very thin front line, but far more powerful than my triple swordsman. And Spears definitely going to be able to overwhelm them pretty handily. And you can see already the Cygors teeing off on my poor Hammer of Witches. Now the Hammer's going to fire back. It's no slouch. It's definitely a pretty accurate artillery piece. But honestly, against 2 Cygors rather than 1, and with some decent RNG here, actually, it's going to be making some good. Cygors are making good connections against my artillery there. And although we're going to get some Pistoliers in on these guys, we're going to do some damage there. My opponent is going to be shutting down my artillery. He's actually going to win the artillery duel with Cygors, or is come close to it. Now here he is zoning away my Pistoliers. We do take some losses, but you can already see how much damage the Pistoliers have done to this Cygor. Sure, it's taking a bit of ammo on these guys, but you know, Cygor down about 1,000 HP already. That's definitely not bad. In the meantime, you can see the first Cygor summon, and this is the point I realize I'm not going to be able to stand and fight. Now, the cool thing about the Hammer Witches is that it hits like a truck, and it can actually shave off entire models on units like Minotaurs, because that's just how hard it hits. And this is probably what I should have been doing right off the bat, focusing these Minnows, looking to get them off the field. In the meantime, we are going to push forward with our infantry, simply looking to engage, and I kind of realized, not necessarily a fit of desperation, but definitely some desperate times here that I need to push, because I'm going to lose this artillery duel. And you can see the Hammer Witches there breaks, and I do believe it actually shatters, and these spears have actually taken a mauling as well, sitting there being protective. So definitely some rough stuff. In the meantime, this engagement over here is going down. You can see the swordsmen are going to get dumpstered by the Vestigors, except for over here in the center where the Cygors sons are much more potent, and Boris is going to dive in to be a nuisance. Unfortunately, the Hammer of the Witches gets completely shattered, so definitely some nuisance there for my opponent. And you can see they break off the field. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, because he went with such a Cygor heavy build, he doesn't have the army numbers to protect his backline. He committed to this front line fight where sure he's winning, but he's not protecting the Cygors. And now you can see the Knights of the Blazing swing around. Empire Knights coming in over here to shut down these Vestigors. The unintentional Chaos Spawn here have taken out my swordsmen, but they've got nothing to fight against. And the Sigmar Sons standing, true patriots here, just tying down these Vestigors and doing quite a bit of work. They're actually pretty potent just because of their high melee stats. Elsewhere in the meantime, you can see the Knights here just overrunning and crushing these Ungor spears, and now the Pistoliers swing around and they're going to start working on these Cygors. And you can see here, even though the Cygor drops a bomb on these Knights of the Blazing Sun, they're actually going to get their full charge up on the Minotaurs, and this is why I see the Minotaurs just suck. Look at how fast they're taking damage. Now sure, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are getting beaten up too, but Boris is going to dive in here. These guys are goners. They just cannot stand. Now sure, they were beaten up, but so were the Knights of the Blazing Sun coming in from the Cygor, and we're just able to slaughter these Minotaurs. Minotaurs cannot stand up, really. And it's why I just don't think great weapons are good. Shields are better. It gives you so much more survivability and protection. Regardless, we are able to get these boys off the field. In the meantime, over here, Gorbel thinks he's going to be cool and powerful. Proven wrong by Boris, who just kind of knocks him over. And in the meantime, the Bright Wizard diving in here against the Cygor. Now, certainly a terrible fight for the Bright Wizard, but he's able to bog this guy down. Over here in the meantime, Empire Knights diving in, tying down the Cygor, and Knights of the Blazing Sun getting in on this Cygor. And this is really some brutal stuff now because we are able to remove my opponent's troops one by one. Over here in the meantime, Empire Knights, who did fight oh so bravely to hold off these Vestigors, are going to bail out, realizing that, you know what, this is a lost cause. Against Morgur, the Chaos Spawn, and the Vestigors, we're not going to be able to win here, and no point in trying to fight that. Same thing over here, these spears are goners. So the infantry corps at this point is basically gone. There's no saving them, but we have been able to sort of remove my opponent's summons from the field, get the Scorbel pulverized, and at this point my opponent is running out of manpower. This Cygor here has been shattered and getting ridden down by the Knights. Cygors have very bad melee defense, so they're really not very good in protracted fights, and they kind of tend to fall apart with their low armor and melee defense for sure. And their leadership's not the greatest either, I don't think. Actually, I lied. 75 leadership is actually pretty nuts, so ignore me. I don't know what I'm talking about, but these guys are getting chased off here, and they were going to be able to remove them from play, which is definitely very good. All three Cygors, including the summon, gone. Now, certainly my opponent will probably be able to get one more in because he does have a caster still in his pocket, and this was definitely a bit of a risk here, and I figured my opponent was going to get greedy. He's going to try to get in here and shut me down. You can see there he does, and in that moment, a mistake is made, and piercing bolts of burning come raining down from the heavens, and you can just see they barrage these poor beastie boys, just decimating them, and Boris promptly leaves. These boys are just incinerated, and you can see the Bright Wizard there gaining about 50 kills, and really the damage output was ridiculous. You can see these guys completely tear at it, and suddenly in come the Knights, smashing into the flank here. And this is why you have to be so careful about piercing bolts of burning. It's such a powerful, you could say gimmick, but it's such a powerful spell. It just decimates enemies. Now, unfortunately, the Chaos Spawn here getting in on top of my poor Bright Wizard, so we're forced to bail. But the cool thing here is we have removed these Ungor Spears, and slowly but surely we're isolating my opponent's troops. You can see these Ungor Spears here in full rout. These Vestigors wavering, very close to routing, and if we're able to sort of slowly but surely chip these boys down, we're going to be in a good spot. And at this stage, I'm actually kind of waiting. I'm waiting for my opponent's Chaos Spawn to expire. There's zero reason to fight them. There's zero reason to give my opponent this fight if I don't have to. And my Pistoliers are working on the Vestigors, working on the Gorbels, depending on what exactly is in good range. Obviously, you don't want to shoot Morgur because he's got 75% missile resist, but everything else here is a good target. And slowly but surely, we're whittling these guys down. Now, sure, we don't have AP, but that just doesn't matter. If we can soften these guys up, and then these guys are refreshed, and you can see we're waiting there a little bit, trying to regain our vigor. Once we're refreshed, we're going to be able to re-engage and just do some brutal damage. So the Chaos Spawn kind of meandering around, looking to do some damage before they expire. My opponent knows he's on a timer, so definitely some brutal stuff. In the meantime, some spears do rally in the distance, but you can see the main thing here is that the Pistoliers are working, and my opponent makes another mistake here, diving in against Boris, and opening himself up to another piercing bolts. And I haven't really used my magic much this game, so this is actually very, very sort of good having so much magic at the end game here. And these Vestigors just fall apart. You can see they're terror routed. These Vestigors over here buckling as well, and of course the chain routes are going to start kicking in. Now Boris coming very close to dying here, but of course we've got Winds of Magic left over, so Cascading Fire Cloak goes down. Boris is suddenly very healthy, and we're going to be able to sneak away, but unfortunately the moment my opponent's been waiting for, another Cygor summon, and this is sort of his last ditch effort here. And you can see I kind of ran out of patience here, overran these Chaos Spawn, and in an effort to save Boris here, we actually commit our Pistoliers into melee. So definitely some brutal stuff there. And over here, we're going to shift our Knights of the Blazing Sun over to this flank to deal with the Cygor, because we do not want that Cygor to get his rocks off. We don't want him to throw those boulders at us. On the periphery, in the meantime, the Empire Knights here run down the Ungor Spears, and we're going to be able to start chasing these Bestigors down, which is very, very important. Now, this Cygor, unfortunately, is still doing some work, but the Pistoliers also working these boys down. These Bestigors are slowly but surely becoming goners, getting chipped away by that pistol fire. Now, sure, like I said before, it's not AP, but these guys are very tired. Their armor is actually weaker than it says on paper because of the tired situation, and they're buckling. Gorbel here, Big Papa Gorbel, trying to get in there, but he's not going to be able to meet me. He's not going to be able to get in there, and now as he's wandered away from the main pack, from the main herd, we're going to be able to dive in here with some Knights of the Blazing Sun, with Boris, and do some more work. And these Bestigors are also going to buckle and break, and do keep in mind, Boris, with the Crush the Weak, as well as the Midland Runefang, does have some crazy debuffs. So keep in mind, one of the things, a bit of a combo here, actually. Crush the Weak only applies -4 leadership, so it might not seem that powerful, but the debuff to melee attack and melee defense, as well as the debuff to melee attack and speed on White Cloak of Ulrich, will increase the chance that your opponent's troops are considered losing in combat, and that, in turn, results in further leadership debuffs. So that's one of the reasons why it can just be such a powerful ability. Now, unfortunately, my opponent, or, well, unfortunately for me, my opponent here does manage to force off my Knights of Blazing Sun, so that's definitely a bit of a nuisance. But on the peripheries, it's clean up in Isle 9. You can see those Bestigors are gone. These Bestigors over here being run down by Empire Knights, who are not in great shape, but you know, we're able to run troops off the field. Over here, these Pistoliers are going to dive in with a bit of a charge. Pistoliers without ammo obviously don't have too much value, so they're just going to kind of dive in there. And over here, the Fire Wizard, the Bright Wizard, is going to pursue these Bestigors. These guys are up to 164 kills, so they've had a good day. But that good day is over, because this bad boy over here is going to run them down with his Fiery Sword. That doesn't do fire damage. And chase them off the field, so definitely some brutal stuff here. My opponent's Infantry Corps is gone, and that suddenly opens this pocket up to annihilation, because we're able to dive in there. Boris dives in, gets a charge into Gorbel. Gorbel's leadership tanks, and he actually dies. So Gorbel's a goner. Suddenly it's just Morgur, the Cygor, and his Shaman, and that's just not going to hold up. These very healthy Knights of the Blazing Sun, 1800 HP by this stage of the game, might as well be a full HP unit. And the Brave Shaman is falling apart. That's only really leaving Morgur. You can see the Balance of Power. Honestly, Balance of Power for Beastmen is a bit borked. It's a bit messed up. It should not be this close. I suppose it is because Morgur is just so high on leadership or in HP. But now we're just going to start cycle charging with Boris while the Knights bog him down. Morgur actually does take bonus damage from Knights of the Blazing Sun because he does have regen, so that's brutal. Empire Knights here on almost full HP. These guys, I'm not even sure what they were doing. I think I kind of left them chasing somewhere. And so now they're committing, and they're able to get in there. And these guys literally at full HP. The Knights of the Blazing Sun at almost full HP, and suddenly Balance of Power shifting down as the Brave Shaman routes. Over here, the Bestigors being chased off the field. Over here, unfortunately, I do believe our Knights of the Blazing Sun shatter, simply exhausted and messed up, and their leadership is very low, so they're not able to hold it together. But you know what? These heroes of the Empire, they've already paid their dues. And at this point, my opponent's army finally does shatter to army losses. So a very brutal sort of back and forth fight. It definitely shows that probably balanced builds are not honestly the best way to go. Hammer of the Witch is definitely a risky pick against Beastmen because of how mobile their army is, but I figured, you know, with so much cav, it's not going to be that much of a risk. My opponent, if he goes super mobile, if he tries to flank and encircle me, the Hammer of Witches isn't going to be at that much risk when there's 2 Knights of the Blazing Sun and 2 Empire Knights in there. The problem is that my opponent just won with his super gimmicky Cygor build, which really dumpstered the Hammer of Witches, shattered it, and that was it. So in hindsight, I would probably be better off ditching the Hammer of Witches, getting like, maybe dropping these chevrons on the spears, honestly, and getting like a unit of Rice Guard in the field. Because that would have been way more valuable in this game, just getting an extra unit of Rice Guard. I'm not entirely sure if I would have been able to get an Amber Wizard on the field. For that cost. I'm not sure how cheap you need to go to get an Amber Wizard on the field, but that's actually a very strong counter to Lizardmen getting Amber Wizard plus Boris, because you get a double whammy of leadership debuffs with Blood Roar. Boris doesn't get Blood Roar, by the way, but if you do a fully stripped down Amber Wizard, how cheap can you go? Literally 1150, so you actually probably could get an Amber Wizard in there. He costs the same as a unit of Rice Guard, and you could have that double whammy of leadership debuffs, -8 leadership, minus 4 leadership on Boris, and then of course debuffs making enemies could lose in combat. So definitely some strong stuff there. Now for my bonus build, very cheesy, very gimmicky, might be much less effective in this next patch because summons route. They don't degrade anymore, which is definitely an advantage, but they do rout now. So if they get surrounded and they're getting beaten down, they're going to just flee instead of sticking around. Summons simply expire now, and for those of you guys who missed it, they don't just have a degrade, but that is somewhat compensated for by the fact that they rout now. So, and they just have a timer, so after a certain amount of seconds, they just vanish, or they just die. But regardless, I definitely actually think that was, except for the Hammer of Witches, which I wanted to try out, and I figured my opponent probably wouldn't bring like a super Cygor heavy build. That was super extreme in the Cygor department. So I kind of figured that the Hammer of Witches would be able to deal with like one Cygor, maybe like a Cygor and a summon. And I was met with double Cygor plus summon, which is crazy. So it just didn't hold up there. And that was just, oh well, what can you do? But besides that, I actually think it's a pretty respectable build. There are other ways you can approach this matchup. You can bring Raid Swords. They're not bad in this matchup. They actually trade really well with Bestigors. You can bring Halberds and just try to absorb your opponent's charge and soak it up, because these guys have expert charge defense, and then just slug it out in the long run. There's a whole bunch of ways you can approach this matchup as Empire. I personally just like these cav-heavy builds. For my opponent's build, well, it was a cheese build, so there's not much to be said. My main critique was the fact that his caster, the way he kitted out his caster, was with only one spell, and he actually brought the trait for this lore, which kind of is pointless in my opinion. Like Bestial Surge without cheap spells is a fairly useless spell in my opinion, or a useless ability. So honestly, you could easily cut that off and get an even cheaper caster. Get like Giant Dagger 672 there. But personally, what I'd probably do is try to get like Vile Tide and Bestial Surge, either Vile Tide or Brave Scream, up to you really, but one of these more spammy spells, maybe Brave Scream because it's uber spammy. And for Minotaurs, guys, I really wouldn't bother with great weapons. They've got anti-large, so it seems like a great idea against cav-heavy factions, against factions that bring like dragons or griffins or lots of cav like Empire or whatever. But the armor, 35 armor, no melee defense basically. These guys get dumpstered on the charge by everything. If you're not able to soak that charge, you're screwed. If you're not able to zone away shooting, and really with a build like the one my opponent brought, there was no way in hell you're zoning away shooting. They just suck. And honestly, Minotaurs with shields are just a better investment. If you're worried about your Minotaurs with shields not performing as well, don't go cheesy with a Savage Dominion. Bring like Mantle of Gorok. Honestly, yeah, honestly, even if heck, you can just ditch that, bring like Mantle of Gorok and Savage Dominion. You'll still get a Cygor summon off, and then if you need a clutch situation, you need to drop like a Mantle of Gorok on your Minotaurs. You got it. That's just my opinion there, but that's really my 2 cents. The huge gap in melee defense, 46 instead of 32. The silver shields makes all the difference in the world for keeping your Minotaurs intact, and living Minotaurs are far better at defending you against cav than dead ones that died to Pistoliers like 5 hours ago. So that's just my 2 cents there. Regardless, well played to my opponent. Definitely was a pretty fun game. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it entertaining and gave you some good fun. If you did, as usual, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share. If you have any comments, any critique, any questions, don't hesitate to post them down below, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.